In a world ruled by monsters, survival was an art form, a brutal ballet danced over millennia. While history remembers the hunters, their names synonymous with terror, the true master of this art was a fortress of bone and will. The Triceratops. Its name may not inspire the same fear as its famous rival, but it commands something far more profound: respect. This is not a story about the perfect predator's fleeting moment of attack. It is the epic saga of the perfect survivor, a creature so powerfully designed for defense that it challenged the very definition of a tyrant day after day. How did Triceratops, the three-horned giant, not only survive but thrive in the shadow of the most fearsome carnivore the earth has ever known? What is true strength? Is it the roar that shakes the forest? The speed to chase down your prey? Or is it something quieter, more profound, forged in the crucible of constant pressure? It is the unyielding resolve to stand your ground when all others flee. It is the power to become an anchor in a world of chaos, a shield for the vulnerable. It is the simple, stubborn refusal to be erased. It is the will to endure. For millions of years, this creature walked the earth, a symbol of defiance made flesh. Its colossal head, armed with a trio of horns and a magnificent shield of bone, would become one of the most famous and recognizable silhouettes in the planet's 4.5 billion year history. But this incredible arsenal was not a sudden gift of evolution, it was the final masterpiece. The culmination of a 100 million year long evolutionary arms race. To understand the legend, we must travel back to the final act of the Cretaceous period, a time when the world was lush, vibrant, and unknowingly on the edge of utter oblivion. Our story takes place at the very end of the age of dinosaurs, a mere moment in geological time before the final curtain fell. The world was a greenhouse, warm and humid from pole to pole. In North America, the Great Western Interior Seaway had receded, leaving behind a verdant floodplain environment. This strip of land, known as Laramidia, was a crucible of dinosaur evolution, a battleground of giants. Here, alongside Triceratops, lived vast herds of duck-billed Edmontosaurus, the armored tank Ankylosaurus, and the towering king of this domain, Tyrannosaurus rex. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth. Flowering magnolias and the ever-present tension of life on the precipice. The legend of Triceratops began not in this primeval forest, but in the dusty, windswept badlands of the American West. Its discovery was a chapter in the infamous bone wars of the late 19th century. A fierce rivalry between paleontologists Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope. In 1887, a pair of horns attached to a skull plate was sent to Marsh, convinced it belonged to a giant extinct species of bison. He named it accordingly. It was an understandable mistake. The fossil record had never offered up anything like it before, but soon more complete skulls emerged from the rock, revealing the jaw-dropping truth. This was no mammal, this was a dinosaur of epic proportions, a member of the ceratopsians, the horned-faced dinosaurs. And it wasn't just any ceratopsian, it was the largest, the last, and the most spectacular of its entire lineage. It was a titan living at the absolute final moment of the dinosaur era, a contemporary and direct challenger to the great tyrant lizard king. Truly no Triceratops, we must see the world through its eyes. For this 10-ton herbivore, life was a constant rhythmic cycle of foraging and vigilance. Armed with a powerful shearing beak, Triceratops was a master of processing the tough, low-lying vegetation of the Cretaceous undergrowth. It was a living bulldozer capable of pushing over tree ferns and cycads to get to the most nutritious leaves, but its mouth held a truly remarkable innovation. A dental battery. This was not a set of individual teeth, but hundreds of teeth stacked vertically in columns, forming a single continuous shearing surface on each side of the jaw. As the outer teeth wore down and fell out, New sharp teeth from the column below would immediately rotate into place. It was a biological conveyor belt of razor-sharp enamel, a mowing machine capable of processing vast quantities of tough fibrous plants that other herbivores couldn't touch. They were the dominant large herbivores of their environment, ecological engineers shaping the very landscape they inhabited. They were not solitary monsters, but complex social animals. They moved in herds that offered a formidable collective defense. A moving fortress of horns and shields, especially for the vulnerable young. Within the herd, a complex hierarchy was likely maintained through intricate social displays and, when necessary, ritualized combat. The juveniles, miniatures of their parents, would spar playfully, locking their small horns in practice for the serious contest that awaited them in adulthood. Their colossal heads were not just for defense against predators, but were also dynamic communication tools, a language written in the tilt of a horn, the flush of color across a frill, and deep rumbling vocalizations that vibrated through the soil. The skull of Triceratops is one of the most magnificent and complex structures ever produced by evolution. At over 2 meters long, it accounted for nearly a third of the animal's total body length. But what was its purpose? The 3 horns are its most famous feature. The 2 brow horns, each a solid spike of bone over a meter long, were its primary weapons. In life, they would have been covered in a sheath of keratin, the same material as our fingernails and the horns of a modern bull, making them even longer, sharper, and more durable. They were built to withstand immense pressure, perfect for both defense and offense. For decades, we saw them purely as anti-predator weapons, a direct evolutionary answer to the bone-crushing jaws of T. Rex. Fossil evidence confirms this violent reality. We have found Triceratops pelvic bones with healed T-Rex bite marks, and T-Rex fossils with puncture wounds that perfectly match the horns of a Triceratops. These were titanic battles, and they were very real. But science now suggests a more complex story. Like the antlers of a modern stag, the horns and frill were likely crucial for intra-species combat, males fighting ferociously for mating rights and territory. And the frill itself is a masterpiece of biological engineering. Once thought to be a simple solid shield, we now know it was a lightweight structure of bone riddled with channels for blood vessels. This suggests it served multiple functions. It was a massive, solid anchor point for the powerful jaw muscles needed to chew tough vegetation. It could have been a radiator, flushing with blood to regulate the animal's body temperature. And perhaps most importantly, it was a billboard, a vibrant, dynamic display structure, possibly adorned with unique patterns and colors, used to attract mates, intimidate rivals, and even identify members of its own species. The horn said, "Don't attack me." The frill proclaimed, "Look at me, I am strong, I am healthy, I am the one you want to choose." The story of its anatomy is still being written, filled with fascinating debates. Some scientists now propose that another dinosaur, Torosaurus, with its longer, thinner frill containing 2 large openings, may not be a separate species at all. Instead, it could be the final fully mature growth stage of Triceratops, a grandpa Triceratops. This theory of ontogeny, the study of how an animal changes as it ages, reminds us that the fossils we find are just snapshots in a creature's life. And that these ancient animals still hold many secrets. But no amount of evolutionary advantage or social cooperation could eliminate the primary threat that stalked their world. In this environment, death was an active hunter. It had a name, Tyrannosaurus rex. This is the ultimate confrontation, a scene that played out countless times across the plains of ancient North America, the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. The hunter versus the fortress. The T-Rex's strategy is to create panic, to use its terrifying presence to scatter the herd and isolate a weaker individual. The Triceratops' defense is unwavering unity and an absolute refusal to back down. The bull plants its feet, a 10-ton anchor of muscle and bone, its head lowered so that the tips of its horns form a lethal barrier. The air crackles with tension. It was a victory born not of aggression, but of perfect, unyielding defense. The tank had defied the tyrant, but even as this terrestrial battle concluded, a far greater threat was approaching. A silent, unstoppable killer from the heavens. Indifferent to horns or teeth, a force that would render all their struggles, all their evolutionary triumphs meaningless. The true crisis was not a predator of flesh and bone, it was a 6-mile-wide asteroid. A mountain of rock and ice from the outer solar system, hurtling towards the Earth at 45,000 miles per hour. The ultimate challenger against which no horn, no shield, and no amount of strength could ever defend. The impact when it came was an event of unimaginable violence, unleashing the energy of billions of nuclear weapons in a single searing moment. In the end, it wasn't the tyrant that brought down the fortress. It was a cosmic accident, an extinction event that rewrote the entire story of life on Earth. Triceratops, along with the T-Rex and all other non-avian dinosaurs, vanished from the world. Their reign, which had lasted for an astonishing 150 million years, ended in a global firestorm, a decade of darkness, and a world plunged into a nuclear winter. Their epic struggle became a fossilized memory buried under layers of ash and time. But their story did not end there. Buried beneath 66 million years of rock, their legacy waited patiently. They left behind a record of their existence etched in stone, a breathtaking testament to their power and resilience. Every fossil we unearth is a word, every skeleton a chapter in their epic poem. Triceratops teaches us that in the grand narrative of evolution, true success isn't just about dominance or aggression. It's about endurance. It's about finding a way to thrive in the face of impossible odds and defending your place in the world. It was the extinction of these giants that cleared the stage for a new kind of animal to emerge from the shadows. Our own mammalian ancestors, their end was our beginning. It stood its ground against the most terrifying predator imaginable, only to be vanquished by the stars. A ghost from a lost world, it remains a timeless, powerful symbol of defiance. The three-horned tank that for a brilliant, glorious moment in Earth's deep history was the undisputed master of its own survival. Its ultimate strength was not found in the act of killing, but in the profound, courageous, and unwavering act of living.